This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Branding Isolate.
The CBD industry is booming and will continue to boom with more and more products hitting the market, and this makes it super important for your brand to stand out from the crowd. That's why I always recommend the branding agency Branding Isolate. Anana and the branding agency, which is comprised of professional designers and web developers, have over 2 decades of experience in design, branding, and website development services. They specialize in the pain points that cannabis operators face when it comes to the lack of FDA consumer oversight in regards to sales and marketing messaging, which is included on your website. Give them a call today at 832-379-8978 or go to their website at brandingisolate.com. Branding Isolate, the branding agency that handcrafts brands that sell, connect, and succeed. Hello, my fellow people of the plant. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast, your favorite podcast that includes industry-facing conversations with the industry's leading experts that aim to educate and inform the public regarding the plant's endless benefits. My guest today is Raquel Origel, founder and CEO at Inanna Manufacturing. Raquel, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Before we dive into Anana Manufacturing, let's first allow the audience to get a sense of you, your background, and how you entered the cannabis industry.
That can be depending on what angle we want to take. That can be fun. So my background is in accounting, and I was an auditor for a good part of my career. And I was what I would consider at the peak of my career, and I decided that I was miserable.
Spreadsheets all day, right? Staring at
all day. And it's funny because as a teenager, that's what I fantasized. That's what I thought I wanted. And one day I started thinking about what would fulfill me, what would make me happy, what do I really want. And I decided that I wanted to do something that was impactful and meaningful. And so I decided to go into cannabis. And a big part of that was to help change the narrative of what cannabis is, whether you want to call it cannabis, marijuana, the plant, what it really is and what it really means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would imagine, like, and correct if I'm wrong, are you Latino? Is that your background?
Or? I am. So I would consider myself like a perfect example of a Chicana, where, I was born in the States, and then I spent a lot of time in Mexico growing up. I went a couple of grade school years in Mexico, and then I would come back here, and there was a back and forth. So I think that is the true example of a Chicano, where you're not really from Mexico, but you're not really in the States. You're kind of both and in between and all in the middle. So
right, and then you got some that are like, no, I'm Spanish. I got Spanish blood in me, which is kind of my side. I have my mom's the Mexican heritage on my mom's side, and my dad's side is the Spanish side. And the reason I asked, of course, your last name Origel, right? And I asked because in the Mexican culture, the Hispanic or Latino culture, there's a huge stigma around cannabis. I don't know if you felt that growing up. I mean, but the term marijuana comes into mind, right? And they kind of, that stigma of, you're just lazy, you're a low life, all you do is smoke marijuana all day. Like it's a real thing.
It's a very real thing. And it's, so growing up, my mom and her family, they're from Sinaloa. So, it's growing up in the 80s, going to Sinaloa, where, marijuana is like marijuana cartel,
Mm-hmm.
It was all just kind of in the mix, the same. And that's really why I wanted to come into this space, because it was, but if I think back of my great grandmother and my great grandmother, when she, would use marijuana for medicinal purposes, and so as I was entering into this space, that was a lot of the conversations I had with my mom, because my mom was just like she is what I would consider your typical, traditional Hispanic Latina mom, you know, where
Mm-hmm.
kind of a telenovela, you know, and she was just like heartbroken that her daughter had entered into that space and was selling marijuana, and so it was interesting conversations.
And it just shows how like the prohibition of cannabis over the last 100 years, they've really kind of just categorized and kind of lumped cannabis into all those other crazy, extremely harmful drugs, right? That are chemically induced, they're man-made. You got heroin, you've got cocaine, methamphetamine, like all this stuff is in the same category of marijuana in the Schedule 1 listing. So it's not our parents and our grandparents' fault, because of the prohibition, but it's just nice to see that there's more education, more understanding, and even I would say more willingness from our parents' generations, our grandparents' generation, to listen more and kind of be open about the plant. It seems like, I don't know if you've felt that.
Absolutely, you're absolutely spot on. And those have been the conversations that I've had with my mom. Remember your grandmother, and remember, she used it as, in Sinaloa, they used to use it as medicine as much as, aloe vera, or as much as any other herbs that were out there. So but that's just it. And then, was someday a group of people came and said, hey, this is bad, and then it was bad. But who
Right.
said, and why did they say it? And
Yeah.
that's exactly why I, the whole narrative around cannabis and marijuana, to me, it's about changing the conversation and changing how people really perceive it. And to me, there's almost a remembering of the plant, and remembering what it was first used for before somebody said that it was a drug.
Mm-hmm.
And
And what have you seen, like, as you've gone on this journey? I don't know what year it was, if you said when you talked about when you transitioned into cannabis, but since then, have you seen that the conversation is easier to have when it comes to people being more open to the dialogue of learning about the efficacy and the benefits of cannabis?
there does, absolutely, there seems to be a little more openness. And for me, at least, in the Mexico, now with Mexico really having the big dialogue around legalizing it, because my parents are from Mexico, it really helps change the conversation, as to where, before they wouldn't even have it. Now in Mexico, there's in the clinics, they're giving it out, medicated topicals, as to before, my mom would want nothing to do with it. She's much more open to it. My aunts, my family is much more open to the conversation, just because there's a lot of buzz out there. And they see it as, if the doctors are now discussing it, if there's now science around it, it must be legitimate.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought up the current state of the talks of legalization that are surrounding Mexico, right? And I believe that the legislation has been put on hold so that the policymakers can kind of fine tune some things in the bill. But we should be hearing any time now that Mexico is going to go full on legal. So my question is, like, what is the public perception and understanding of cannabis compared to the United States? Like, is it more, accepted and understood, or is there still that stigma and resistance and level of understanding that needs to get there?
I think it depends on who you're talking to. I think in my family, a lot of my cousins are doctors in Mexico. And if they also are on Sinaloa. And so from the conversations that I've had with them, they're much more open and receptive to the dialogue. But like anything else, there's still that stigma, right? There's still the stigma of marijuanos, and it's bad, and it's the cartel, but not nearly as much as, in the 80s or 90s. I do see a greater acceptance. And like I said, in Mexico, they do have universal health care there. So the clinics give it as medicine, right? Topicals, medicated topicals is a big thing. At least in Sinaloa, I know it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's that's good that at least the healthcare system, in Mexico, like there's doctors that are open to thinking about this as a medicine, right? As something to help with different ailments that certain people have, whether it's epilepsy or seizures or anything else where we're starting to understand that these different cannabinoids can help with, you know. And so I want to switch gears with you, Raquel. I want to talk to you specifically about Inanna Manufacturing, the company that you founded and you lead as the CEO. But before we get into that, tell us what Inanna means. I know we talked before we started recording. It's a goddess, is that right? Named after a goddess?
She is. Anana is a goddess. She is the goddess of love and war.
Awesome. So does that relate or tie into your brand at all, and kind of what Inanna Manufacturing's mission statement is?
It does, so to me, it's, our business, we lead with our hearts. And a lot of what we do is, doing it from a different perspective, more from our hearts than our minds. But, sometimes you have to call upon different areas, which is the war part. I don't think one person is one thing. So that's
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that, because like any industry where you're a business owner, you're founder of a company, it's difficult to operate a business, but especially within cannabis, right, which is the most highly regulated industry out there. So I can imagine that, yeah, you need to look on to other things in terms of going to war sometimes to navigate through certain challenges or red tape or regulations that are put in place every other day, right?
that's exactly it. That's spot on. I think there's just on a day-to-day basis, you have to be very tactical. And then also, there is a part that there's a huge love of the plant and respect, and of the brands that we work with as well. So
Mhm. Well, talk to us about some of the challenges that you've faced when entering into the licensed cannabis industry and operating a manufacturing business. Like, what are those challenges, and how did you overcome them?
so I mean, I can answer that question in two ways. I can answer it in, what is it, what were the challenges to me, or just what are the challenges in general. I
Maybe
think
both. You can do both. Yeah.
so. To me personally, one of the biggest challenges has been navigating the, unconscious bias that goes on in this industry. As I am, meeting with people or having discussions, there's quite a bit of an unconscious bias that goes on.
What do you mean by that?
A perfect example would be, I will take a peer of mine to a meeting, and he happens to be a male. And it's a room full of men, and I am maybe one of two women or only woman. I don't get, people don't, usually, I'm generalizing here, a lot of the conversations go to my partner. The looks go to him. The, look of approval or the look of disapproval will go to him as opposed to me, or just being talked over, happens quite a bit. So navigating that, and a lot of it, I don't think is conscious. A lot of the questions that I get asked, doesn't happen with my partner, if you will, or anyone else in the organization, gentleman in the organization, I should say.
Mhm.
So there is some of that I have had to learn how to navigate. And
Sure.
then just in general, in manufacturing, it's compliance. We are overseen by, as you know, BCC and then CDPH. We just went through a fairly extensive CDPH audit. So it's compliance is an everyday conversation in this space. I think I have our compliance officer on speed dial. So
Yeah. Well, let's dive into both of those. I mean, the first is a very important issue that you bring up, and that's the personal experience that you've had with that unconscious bias, right? And like you said, like you're generalizing. It's not that they're probably doing this on purpose or what, but maybe this is a mode of behavior that it's been ingrained for so long, and it's not right, right? We need to be more inclusive. We need to be more diverse with these leadership and management teams that we have operating these companies. And what we've talked about on this podcast before is how the cannabis industry is such in a unique position to make that pivot. Like yourself, there's a very small, I would imagine, percentage of women who are CEOs, especially at a manufacturing cannabis company, right? You do have the Kim Rivers of the world who are doing an amazing job at Trulieve. But we still have a long ways to go. And so would you agree that, we're one industry that's uniquely positioned to kind of evoke that change and be more progressive in that aspect?
I absolutely agree. I think, that is one of the beautiful things about this industry is that it has the power to do so much, right? To really change the narrative of the plant, to change the diversity. There's a lot because it's such a young industry. And one of the reasons that I wanted to go, that I made the conscious decision to go into manufacturing as opposed to a brand or retail stores, was one of them was that opportunity. And also, I'm in love with a lot of brands, so being able to help them go out to market and take that through was another reason. But
Go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
no, I was going to say, but I think it's there. I would say most of it is unconscious, and some of it is implicit. Some of it is just outright. That's
Right.
some of the behavior that I haven't seen anywhere else in my professional career.
Would you say that behavior that's more pointed and directed, are those legacy operators that have been in the industry starting in the illicit market? Are these more kind of traditional business professionals coming from different industries into the cannabis space, or is it a mix of both?
Yeah, I would have to say it's a mix of both, because I've had the most amazing and incredible, kind-hearted people that have come from the illicit market, right? That are legacy. So I would say that it's just a mixture. That there's something about this industry that calls upon some passionate characters, and that passion can come in different forms.
Right. So what can we do as an industry to really lead by example when it comes to being more inclusive and diverse with the individuals that we're employing in these businesses?
I think a lot of it requires awareness, right? Because it is unconscious behavior. Most of it, at least from my perspective, is unconscious bias, unconscious behavior. I think it's just requires an immense level of awareness as to when we're doing it, how we're doing it, and we have the power and ability to decide how we show up in everything we do. And I think it's just recognizing that and knowing that would make a significant difference. And not quickly dismissing someone because of their gender, or not quickly being so quick to write someone off because of the way that they look.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, it's even more so evident, or it should be evident, in the cannabis industry, because we're all people of the plant, right? And we all come from different backgrounds and demographics and upbringings and viewpoints, and we even consume the plant in different ways, right? Some of us like to smoke the flower, some of us like to consume edibles. So that inclusion and that awareness of inclusion should definitely be top of mind, given the fact that that's just how the plant is, right, by nature.
That's correct. I like to, I learned a little fun fact a while ago that the gosh, and I might mess this up, but the cannabis, the actual plant that we use, that we smoke, it's the female plant, right? And so I was like, oh, exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
That's right. It's the feminized seeds, right? And that's the feminine plant. The feminized cannabis plant is what produces the buds, the flower that we consume for the therapeutic and medicinal. If you're talking about growing hemp for fiber and hurd, that's a male plant that you just put in the soil and pull out and separate. So you're absolutely right. There is an inherent feminine quality to the plant.
Right. That's exactly it. When I learned that, a couple of years ago, I had so much fun with it. I was like, yeah, it's the female. It's the female that gives the seeds. It's the female that helps create. Yeah. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
for this space, because we are, I consider it to be such a young space, that there is an incredible opportunity for us to do things different and to have inclusion, and to really be one of the industries that recognizes and really appreciates diversity within it. Because that the thing that unites us is just it's the plant, and we all have a love for it. It's just how, so.
I couldn't agree more, Raquel. I could not agree more. And it's good to see different coalitions like the United States Cannabis Council doing their part to make sure that people of color who have been disenfranchised by cannabis for the last 100 years, right, that there are social equity protocols in place and restorative justice protocols. But even again, even at the corporate level, we got to make sure that we're diverse and inclusive of genders and everything like that. And so I totally agree. I want to talk to you about Inanna and your white labeling services. So tell us, what are the benefits to white labeling cannabis for brands as opposed to, doing everything yourself?
I feel like the answer might be a little too simple. It's, it is really, the brands get to be brands. They are able to focus their resources on marketing and really being a brand. And the manufacturer, their job is to ensure quality of the product, to manufacture the product. Um, Over 60% of the rest of the world white labels the products, whether you are going out and buying a beauty product or food, it's typically not the brand that manufactures it. For the most part, it is a manufacturer that manufactures for the brand. And that's, I forgot.
No, that's fine. No, it makes sense, right? Because what
I
you're
should have
saying,
wrote down the question, because I was about to bring it back, and then my mind just went blank.
benefits of white labeling for
As-
cannabis brands as opposed to not.
Right. That is the benefit. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're totally fine. Don't worry about it. And so that makes total sense, because it seems like there would be a lot more capital involved to grow your own plants, right? And have all the infrastructure in place to do that successfully. And then, not to mention, the extraction process, putting those cannabinoids in different formulations to make products. So, I mean, if you're really strong on the branding and messaging side and you have a target audience in mind, it seems like white labeling would be a good option. If, of course, you have a brand like Inanna who's producing high quality products, of course.
Right, correct. I mean, that is just it. It's the cost efficiency, it's the time. Really, if you are, as opposed to going out and really building out your own manufacturing facility, because it's not just regular manufacturing, you have to go through the licensing process. In addition to that, we already have, a group, scientists and, product developers that help the brands hone in the recipes if need be. In addition to that, because we are a pure white label manufacturer, we have developed house recipes that our brands can come and use. That would then be theirs, their recipe, their formulas.
Wow. So there's that customization kind of element to that, right? Where you kind of work with the client or the customer to ensure that their product is differentiated from others.
That's correct. That's spot on.
Yeah.
And and they really can lean into the expertise that we bring, which is the scientist, which is, we also have a chef. If the flavoring is not correct, or if there's a an issue with the texture of the base, you know. So, in addition to that, we also will refer them over to distribution companies that we have partnerships with, and where they can decide how they're going to distribute their product. So, I mean, I think that there's a list of reasons as to the benefits of it. I think, one of the cons of doing white label is, you know, ensuring that you're doing the due diligence, that it's really a manufacturer that you trust, that is going to, have the quality, and bring your brand out to market in the quality that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and it seems like those benefits, like because there's already so many, like the market's flooded with so many different cannabis and CBD and hemp companies, that there's going to be consolidation at some point, right? And so it seems like it'd be a better avenue if you don't have the capital and the infrastructure and whatnot to kind of be vertically integrated. Seems like it would be a good route to take, you know.
It's a fraction of the cost, and a fraction of the time.
Right.
Especially if you already have a brand elsewhere. I think it just frankly makes the most sense to use a white label manufacturer.
Mm-hmm. And so tell me a little bit about the suite of products that y'all manufacture. Like, is it everything from edibles, topicals, sublinguals, like all the above?
So it's edibles. We are playing with topical formulas, and also small drinks.
Okay. Very nice. And edibles, are they primarily gummies? Is that what you said?
Yes, gummies. I mean, we have the ability to make others, but our main focus is gummies, tinctures as well, and we have created house recipes, for our brands that are vegan, vegan gummies with a clean, recipe.
Nice. Very nice. So tell me a little bit about y'all's efforts when it comes to giving back. Um, do you have any involvement with any nonprofits? And if so, what things are you doing in the community to improve?
My entire focus, I would say my life's focus has been, serving underserved communities. Um, and within that, I tend to focus on, women and girls. So Feed a Billion is a charity that speaks, into that, and I really connect with. So I have, done a lot of work with Feed a Billion right now. Inanna is helping them, do some rebranding, and is really working directly with them, and providing a service, if you will. In addition to that, I have, personally been giving to that charity for the last several years.
And what specifically does Feed a Billion do to help mothers and younger girls?
So their focus is girls.
Oh, girls.
Their focus is, giving meals to girls that are in situations, in where they can be exploited. So to help exploitation of young girls, they provide meals to them.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, I mean that seems like a very important initiative.
It's an interesting topic, and it can be a deep topic, in that, and it's in the States, and it's not just in other countries, or it's everywhere really, that girls are more susceptible to being exploited, when families find themselves in separate, excuse me, in desperate situations. So really this, Feed a Billion focuses on, preventing that, through food.
Got you. That's great. So tell me, what is Anana's focus for 2021 and beyond?
our focus is really continuing to develop the relationships with our brands, with the brands, and creating a reputation in the industry of quality. This is an exciting time. The whole industry is in an exciting time with the new legislation that's here. Where the state of California is, where really the nation is. We're in a position right now where the industry is going to massively change in the next couple of years. I see it. You and I will have a conversation, Kevin, in 3 years from now. We're going to say, wow, remember way back when banking wasn't allowed. So I do see there being incredible changes coming up in the next couple of years. And really, I'm looking forward to the science and the data that's being created right now around the plant, and having deeper discussions about minor cannabinoids and what they can really do and the science behind that. Right now, within our organization, we have been testing, if you will, THCV, which is, I personally find exciting, THCA, and I think most people are familiar with CBN, but there's so many other minors out there that I'm yearning to get the data for, and have the really backing. CBG is another one that I have recently fell in love with. So that's the excitement, and that is the creation in this industry. There's so much that can be created, and although manufacturing isn't sexy, I think it's one of the most fun areas to be in, because you get to really be a part of what is being created within the industry.
Mm-hmm. No, that's very well said. I couldn't agree more. We're living in just super exciting times. I mean, we're right at the forefront of the floodgates about to explode, both on the adult use side, but then also, like you said, the learnings and the science behind the minor cannabinoids, and just learning more about how this plant and these compounds, help us with different ailments. And so I agree. I cannot wait to have you back on, like in the near future, and we're going to talk about how things have evolved and changed, and it's going to be an exciting discussion to have. So Raquel, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people find Inanna's website and social media if they want to learn more?
So it's Inanna, INANNA MFG.com, and our Instagram handle is Inanna WL.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, hey, you heard it from Raquel first. And again, thank you so much for your time today, Raquel. And again, I look forward to our future conversation.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. And thank you all for listening. Bye.